I told you that behind some of the biggest manufacturing stories you've read was a ghost? Not the spooky kind, but the strategic kind. The kind who ghost writes, ghost builds, and ghost engineers the public image of billion-dollar brands and still finds time to launch your own company from the ground up. Hello and welcome back to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Mayer. And before we get into today's story, let me ask you something. Are you ready to lead the change? Because the Lead the Change Tour is in full swing, bringing our national leadership workshop to cities across the country. Whether you're a new manager learning how to lead or you're driving digital transformation on your facility floor, this is where growth happens. Find your city, grab your seat, and let's build something better together. Full details can be found at themfgconnector.com. And while you're there, you can catch up on all things Manufacturing Connector. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, posting real stories, real conversations, and real people shaping the future of this industry. And if you love solutions, and I mean, do you really love them, don't miss our other shows. Work But Make It Human is all about leadership with heart, and the Manufacturing Connector on YouTube dives into what's working on the ground in real time. If you're a problem solver, those are your new favorite shows. Okay, now on to today's guest. Stephanie Pryor is a communicator, a connector, and one of those rare professionals who knows how to take a brand from we exist to you can't ignore us. She's the founder of LANC Marketing, a strategic communications agency built specifically for manufacturing and tech. Her work has landed clients in Forbes, CNN, CNBC, and the New York Times. But what makes Stephanie truly special isn't the headlines she's written, it's the hustle. She's a writer, a strategist, and an entrepreneur who knows what it means to build from scratch. We're going to talk about her journey, the wins, the wild turns, and what it means to lead with both brains and heart in this industry. Let's dive in. Welcome, Stephanie, to the Manufacturing Culture Podcast. How are you doing today?
Hey, Jim. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I'm doing great, and I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to. Stephanie, you and I originally met at the Industrial Marketing Summit in Austin, and you and I really hit it off. I think that what we're going to talk about today is exceptionally important because we're not going to just dive into your story, what your view of culture is, kind of those things. But we're going to talk about how manufacturing has impacted you based on your lived experiences and what we're seeing right now in the industry. So this is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Stephanie, the first question I ask every single guest these days, it started back in December or January, and it kind of breaks the ice to these interviews. What does company culture mean to you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I love that you ask everyone that question and that everyone has a different answer.
Yes.
And so, when you invited me to be on this podcast, I definitely gave that some thought. But ultimately, it was pretty clear to me what company culture means for me. And of course, this is just based on my work experience, my career so far.
Yeah.
But I think company culture is a combination of tangible and intangible things, all of which make up your experience as an employee at a company, as part of a team at a company. And the tangibles are pretty straightforward. It's like benefits and vacation and compensation, opportunities to move up and grow in your career. But then there's the intangibles that I think are arguably as important, maybe even more important than some of the tangible components of culture. And what that really comes back to for me is psychological safety.
Yes.
I've had good experiences. I've had very bad experiences. I, like many people, struggle with anxiety and, just generally feeling worried about how I'm doing or feeling overwhelmed and, all these feelings that are very common when you care a lot about what you're doing.
Yes.
And so for me, a good company culture is one that creates that sense of psychological safety, that I'm in a space where I'm free to be creative. I have flexibility. I feel like I belong, like my ideas belong, and the work I'm doing matters. And I feel like I'm working towards something bigger than myself, and all of that being celebrated and prioritized. So I would say, in my view, that's what company culture is, and it could be totally the opposite of what I said, right? But for me, that would not be a good company culture. So yeah, that's what it means to me.
I I really do love that sentiment, Stephanie, and I love it because you personalized it, right? Because you made that answer based on your lived experiences. So, thanks for that. Stephanie, let's go into your origin story. We're all at a point in our stories where we're midway through. This isn't the beginning. This isn't the end. We are right smack dab in the middle of our story. So I want to hear about some of your early influences. We'll get into, you know, your background, where you grew up in a little bit, but were there some early influences on you that shaped this path, whether they be personal or professional or even geographic?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I would say, you know, with the culture question that I just answered, I think that it ties into this question as well, and my experience, which is that everyone's experience is different, and that's why a certain type of company culture might work better for me and the people that work with me than for others.
Sure.
And that's because I thrive in a structured environment. I've always been in a situation where if I worked hard, then I would get the reward of that hard work, right? Like the hard work would be recognized, and that came from academics, it came from athletics. I was a competitive runner. Well, I still am. Have been running competitively for more than
Really?
20 years. I ran through middle school, high school, college, you name it, I've done it. And so that
Track
really, sorry,
track or cross country?
both. I was
Okay.
a cross country runner and a track runner. In college, I was primarily 5K, 10K, so distance.
Sure.
Since then, I've scaled that up. I did my first road marathon actually in November of 2024, and qualified for Boston, which is very exciting.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
massive.
Thank you. And I've done an ultra marathon, so I've done a lot of different types of racing. But anyway, the running really has shaped a lot of my work ethic. It has shaped a lot of my traits that transfer from that to the workplace. And so I knew if I put that hard work in, then the output is going to be good. So then after I graduated from college, I went to Shippensburg University here in Pennsylvania. I started out working in PR firms, and that was a great experience for me, and that's ultimately what I'm doing now. But throughout the course of my career, I really wanted to dabble in different things. So I worked as a graphic designer for a while. I've worked on the marketing side of the house. Really, at the end of the day, I always kind of gravitated back toward PR though. And so that's where my work at LANC as a business owner, and PR professional really stems from. But it's throughout the course of my career, I've gotten the chance to work in all different capacities of marketing functions. So for me, working in an environment that does have a lot of different tasks to focus on, a lot of structure, a lot of, hey, got to get this done, get this done, get this done. At the same time, I get to work with a bunch of different people, and I love that. I love the variety. And then naturally, just, I like having an environment that's a little bit more flexible.
Sure.
Lank is entirely remote. All of our employees are remote. And so those experiences of being very disciplined and being somebody who works very hard at their goals definitely transferred over to my professional life, and also the kind of environment that I thrive in. So yeah, I
I
hope
love it.
that was a good
I love
answer.
it. No, it's a great answer. You grew up in the Lehigh Valley, right?
I did.
Surrounded by the legacy of steel mills, right? Bethlehem Steel is right there in the backyard of Lehigh Valley. How did growing up in that environment shape your perception of the industry, and how has that perception maybe changed over time?
Yeah. So I am 33 years old. I just turned 33 in March.
Happy
So
birthday.
I was about 10 when Bethlehem Steel shut its doors for good.
Yeah.
I definitely was not alive during the heyday of Bethlehem Steel when it was a major economic force in the Lehigh Valley. It's a major employer and had been since the mid 1800s. And so for me, in my mind's eye, what I saw when I thought about manufacturing was this shut down, dilapidated steel mill that was
Yeah.
no longer making anything. It was just kind of sad and falling apart. And that was well, I should say since then, now Arts Quest is in there and it's a great event venue. It's a big part
Okay.
of Music Fest. It's very cool that they have the casino there now, and they've done a great job revitalizing that and making it like a tourist destination now. But all of that said, in my mind, manufacturing was non-existent.
Yeah.
Manufacturing in the United States was Bethlehem Steel. All the jobs had gone away. There was no industry anymore. Where did that industry go, right? All I saw was this old abandoned steel mill in my mind. Uh, and I think what's interesting about that is I'm not alone in that belief. And
So before you started LANC Marketing, and LANC comes from Lancaster, right?
Mhm.
You told me earlier. You had a really storied career helping other companies craft their stories and build their brands, and you kind of alluded to the fact that you've always been on the marketing side of the house. Um, what was that moment that you decided you were ready to jump out on your own at you're 33 years old, and how has that leap been so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I will say I've worked with all different types of companies, primarily on the B2B side. That's
Okay.
that's my happy place. That's where I've always been. I've done B2B. I've done what I call B2F, so business to federal government, essentially people that are doing, RFPs for federal contractors,
Sure.
things of that nature. And then I was lucky enough to get into the tech and the manufacturing side. And so my last full time job that I had before I started my own business was with SEMrush, which is one of the leading SEO and brand and content marketing platforms in the world. Anybody
Yeah.
who works in marketing is probably familiar with SEMrush. And when I started there, I was on their organic search team. I moved over to the PR team after a few months. And when my time there was through, I was trying to think about what I wanted my next step to be. And I decided that, at this point, it was time for me to just take the leap and bet on myself. And so that's how LANC came to be in existence. I was freelancing for a little while, and I was really enjoying that, which was really the primary driver of deciding I was going to bet on myself. I was like, hey, you know what? I kind of like being my own boss and
Yeah.
being able to work on my own schedule and work on the projects that I want to work on. And yeah, I was lucky enough to just be in the right place at the right time and secure our first couple of clients. And here we are 2 years later. We have a team of three, myself included. So
Wow.
we are small but mighty, entirely self-funded company. Literally, it
Awesome.
just took what I had in my savings account and I used that to start my business. So we don't have any external funding. And yeah, it's been really cool to just build this business. I've learned so much about having my own business in that time.
Yeah.
But probably what I've enjoyed the most is the opportunity to niche down, so to speak, into manufacturing and industrial companies specifically because they do have so many shared challenges when it comes to their marketing, communications, visibility. And there's so much that we can do to help them. So it's been a really great journey.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that industrials or manufacturing in specific have about PR or marketing?
I think there are a few. It's hard to pick one
You-
primary.
okay, you can give me a couple then.
Yeah, it's hard to pick one primary misconception. I think maybe the highest level that really affects all functional areas of marketing is that marketing is viewed as a cost center. That is not specific to manufacturing and industrial companies. That is pretty much every industry out there.
Yeah.
However, I think in manufacturing, it is just a particularly strong misconception that marketing is a cost center, and that's because there is not, I think, a full understanding of how much marketing has changed and evolved over the last 5, 10, 15 years, maybe
Yeah.
even more than that, depending how long these companies have been around. And I don't think it's any secret that manufacturing is more old school, so to speak. That is not a knock on manufacturing
No.
whatsoever. But I do think that when things have been working one way for such a long time and then suddenly it kind of seems like all these things are changing, and how are we supposed to keep up, how are we supposed to keep building our pipeline, and then you're also seeing all these other companies that are in different industries getting all the press, all the airwaves, all of that, that you might not really understand how to get from point A to point B, or how to even get to point A in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think just viewing marketing as a cost center, how you can use marketing ultimately to make more money and build out your pipeline, is probably the biggest misconception and lack of understanding that plagues the manufacturing industry.
Yeah, you and I were emailing back and forth the last couple of days leading up to this. And you made a statement in one of your emails that manufacturing has a visibility problem, right? And I don't think that's a secret. I think we've been talking about how do we solve that for a while. But we've been trying to solve that within the echo chamber of what manufacturing is, right? The echo chamber that we hear on LinkedIn. I think that the public perception is a little bit different, and the public perception kind of goes back to what you were talking about from your experience, right? Those facilities and factories shuttering, and the generational trauma that the jobs being ripped away from those communities has really created. Why do you think that perception of manufacturing is dead still lingers, even though, as you pointed out in your email, the numbers say otherwise?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, manufacturing has a visibility problem. That is 100% true. It's kind of hard to argue that. When you do look at the numbers and you look at the trends that are out there, and you look at those common misconceptions that are shared across different manufacturing companies and all different, verticals, but they all kind of have these same similar viewpoints or challenges. So yeah, manufacturing is not really a very visible industry in the United States, which is kind of shocking, right? We know that manufacturing is not dead. The people listening to this podcast know manufacturing is not dead. The
Yes.
United States is the world's second largest manufacturing nation, second only to China, even though manufacturing is only responsible for 10% of GDP in the
Right.
United States.
Right.
So, manufacturing is a significant player in the United States economy. Again, we are the second largest manufacturing nation in the world, yet the the general American public believes that manufacturing is dead. So if you yourself don't work in manufacturing, or your mom or your dad or your husband, your wife, your friends, if they don't work in manufacturing directly, you might not really know or think that manufacturing is
Yeah.
no longer a bustling industry in the United States, and that's just obviously just categorically false. And somewhere that we've really seen this belief come front and center is just with all the recent news around the tariffs. And one of the things that I've found, especially as a PR and media professional,
Yeah.
extremely interesting, is that there has been this consistent message from both sides of the aisle. It's not one or the other,
Yeah.
and it's that manufacturing is dead in the United States, and it has been for some time, and it needs to be brought back.
Stephanie, I think that it has been, and this is kind of a hot take. I think it has been dying. I think that we, 40 plus years ago, made some policy decisions, and due to those policy decisions and a lot of corporate greed, we did start offshoring a lot of production that happened in the US. That's not a secret. I mean, there's a lot of data and statistics to show that the manufacturing industry really started to decline in the 50s and 60s, but that accelerated in the 80s and 90s and even into the early 2000s, which also coincides with the constriction of the middle class. And so when you're creating policies that offshore, um, when you allow corporate greed to offshore because they don't want to pay employees what they're worth, and it was cheaper to make those goods outside of the U.S. What we did was we created this massive three-pronged problem, where we've reduced our manufacturing capacity in the U.S. We don't have the capacity to make what we once did. We've at the same time told kids that manufacturing was dark, dirty, and dangerous, and to go get a university degree instead of getting into skilled trades. And we only pushed, at least at my high school, we pushed the losers, the burnouts, the troublemakers into the skilled trades, right? So we lost our pipeline of young people, and at the same time, in addition to the capacity and the workforce problem, we let our infrastructure in the US crumble to a point where we can't get goods from the steel mills in Pennsylvania to Phoenix in an expedient manner, right? So we have a three-pronged issue right now. Now we're slapping tariffs as the solution to bringing back American manufacturing. To your point, American manufacturing is still here. It's just not as robust as it once was. But we're talking about a fix that will take years, if not decades, to get back to where we could have been if we hadn't made those policy decisions 4 years ago. Sorry, I didn't mean to rant. I don't like to generally rant when I'm interviewing somebody, but that's my own little rant. And now, Stephanie, we're closing the one resource that small to medium-sized manufacturers have in these MEP programs, manufacturing extension programs. Anybody listening, if you made it through my rant and didn't fast forward to Stephanie's next answer, please support your local MEPs. These are organizations that are vital to the success of that small to medium-sized manufacturer. Sorry, rant over. Back to Stephanie's points. So you had brought up four big factors in this back and forth we had: tech dominance in media, workforce gaps, fear of being visible, outdated growth strategies. Which one of those feels like the biggest opportunity right now for manufacturing to address this visibility problem?
Yeah, well, it's so hard to pick, but it's something that you touched on in your rant, which I thought was great. I just want to say that. But I think one of the single biggest crises facing manufacturing, and this could be in so many different verticals within manufacturing, but is this skilled workforce gap.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that this is an emerging crisis that people in the space are generally aware of, but I don't know necessarily that there's broader public awareness of how bad this has
Yes.
gotten. And you hit the nail on the head when you said how there was this shift, and as a communications professional, I want to say a shift in perception, right, about how we communicated about your post high school options. So
Yep.
yes, to your point, considering a skilled trade, not something that would have been on my radar when I was about to graduate high school back in 2010. I thought my only choice and my only option was to go on and get a 4-year degree, which I
Yep.
ultimately did. And I'm glad I did. And I love what I do. But I do think that we need to see a change in perception of skilled trades and going to trade school. my sister, she went to trade school after she graduated from high school. And she told me a story where, she had told a friend that she was going to trade school. And the friend almost kind of was like, oh, that's nice, kind of like looking down on her for doing that. And
Yeah.
I think the real question here is why, why are we telling, and I hope we're not still doing this, and maybe this is part of the solution, but why aren't we getting more of the younger generations excited about manufacturing jobs, the ones that do exist? And yes, that hopefully we will be able to create more jobs in manufacturing, but why aren't we trying to get that future workforce excited about the opportunities that are there? And we're not talking about, the Henry Ford style manufacturing that I think most people think of when they think
Right.
of what manufacturing is, right? Like a lot of these jobs are very, very skilled. It's not just, you walk out of high school, you walk onto the plant floor and you're making something. There's a lot of skill and training and education involved. And so I think we really just as a whole need a perception shift on this.
Yeah.
And it's in manufacturing, but it's in other skilled trades as well. So construction is one where there's a
Yeah.
huge workforce gap. Even electricians, plumbers, these really sort of like basic, not basic, but fundamental trades that we
Yeah.
all need. There's just declining engagement from the younger generations in these trades. And so yeah, something has got to change there and fast. And manufacturers do have some control over this. There are ways to engage those potential future workers. There are ways to kind of build an employer brand and to show those future workers, future employees, why they should pursue that career and all the opportunities and benefits and value that are
Yeah.
part of that.
I think to some of the biggest like media PR moments in the US, right? You've got the Super Bowl, you've got NCAA basketball tournaments, you've got these things where you see universities able to afford their messaging, their ads that they are able to run during those moments where you've got millions of young people watching, right? And they make it attractive, they make it sexy, they make it a place where they can see themselves. Not many manufacturers can afford that kind of publicity, right? I mean, we're talking millions of dollars for 30 seconds to be in that kind of spotlight. Uh, we Build Submarines has done a great job in the last couple of years in getting more of a PR push towards, hey, come, build submarine parts. Um, is it going to take, in your experience with your expertise, is it going to take some sort of national campaign like that to bring Gen Alpha, Gen Z to the forefront of manufacturing and skilled trade careers? And how much of that depends on the stories that we're telling or not telling to get them interested?
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be some national multi-million dollar campaign to at least get started and get in front of these potential future employees. I think there are smaller ways that smaller manufacturers with fewer resources can get involved and start to build that community and build their brand with these younger generations.
Yeah.
They're every manufacturing company has plant locations, and guess what, there's going to be high schools and technical schools and community colleges all around those areas. So that might be a good place to look.
Yeah.
If you want to get in front of those audiences, start building relationships with those potential education partners in your community and think about what value you can add for them as well, but through that engagement, right? Helping students maybe figure out what the right career path would be for them. Is a trade better for me than going to a 4-year school? Is going into a trade more affordable and financially realistic for me than going to a 4-year school. There's a lot of different considerations for everyone when it comes to making a decision like that. So yes, just being in the places where they are physically is important. And then to your question about the stories that we're telling or not telling, look at all the channels that are at our disposal to reach those people. In the same way that you might think about marketing a product to a potential customer, you also want to market these jobs and these careers to these younger people. And where are they? They're on social media first
Yes.
and foremost. And I think that social media, especially the Instagrams, the TikToks of the world, just absolutely foreign territory for manufacturers. And I'm not saying that every manufacturing company needs to make a TikTok and try to become an influencer, something like that. That's just
Yeah.
not realistic. However, there are ways to use those channels as tools to reach those types of people and show what that experience is actually like.
Yeah.
Working for your company, working in that kind of job, and showcasing people who are actually doing the work. So it's not just, hey, put the CEO in front of the camera and say, hey, working here is so great. But show the people who are actually on the plant floor, talk to them, get insight into their story, into their experience, how they got there, what they like about what they do. Just capturing the real stories of real people doing these jobs. And that's how you can connect with those younger audiences.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, again, just like the universities are able to make the young people feel like they can be a part of that community, we can too. As long as we're showing that representation, right? The youth. We talked about it in Austin. I was asked the other day by Kurt about this. Uh, your employees as a manufacturer are your best recruiting tool, right?
Mhm.
And your branding is your best recruiting tool that you have. So use those real employees to talk about their experiences and make the youth feel like they fit, like they belong in your facility, right? Um, Stephanie, you have some mind blowing stat, and I'm gonna kind of try and tee you up for that. Um, and I'm gonna ask you, based on my experience, a lot of manufacturers still feel or their web pages still feel very static, right? They're static pages. They have a list of their capabilities, a list of their machines that they have in their facilities, and that's their like marketing strategy, right? How what advice do you have for those small to medium sized manufacturers who want to build visibility and don't know where to start?
I mean, I could say the reason that manufacturers need to invest in marketing, in their brand presence, in their communications, is again because by and large, people do not know that manufacturing is still a bustling industry, despite the challenges. Right, it's still a major industry in the United States. And what's interesting is that between January and April of this year, there was a 646% increase in media coverage of the term bring manufacturing back. That is all within the context of the tariff news and announcements and everything that's been happening there. But that is the common theme
Yeah.
is bring manufacturing back. And this is in major mainstream media outlets. I just saw this exact term mentioned in the Wall Street Journal this morning. Um,
Wow.
so
This
these
morning.
are
So this is April 11th, everybody.
Yeah, it's happening now, and it just shows how important it is for manufacturers to step up, modernize their marketing, and say, this is what manufacturing is now in the United States. It's not Ford Motor from the early 20th century. It's not. That's what most people think, or they think about making iPhones or something like that. But that's not what manufacturing is in the
Right.
United States, and it's our job and something we can do to help manufacturers do that and create that visibility and tell their story. But it's imperative or in their best interest to do this because then they can really own that narrative and show, hey, this is our story. This is what it's like to work for us, and really be able to connect with those younger audiences, their potential workforce, but also their potential customers, potential partners within their industries, building community with like their actual local communities, which is very important as well. There's all these different elements of strategic communications and marketing that can really help to build a powerful brand and help these manufacturing brands to be very successful.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about where manufacturers can start, it really depends. So if we're talking about a large multi-billion dollar manufacturing company, they already have a marketing function. Now, how productive that marketing function is,
Sure.
that's always questionable. However, they generally have kind of a better handle on what marketing should be used for, what their brand is, what they stand for, what they don't, what their values are, what their messaging should be. And there's always room for improvement, but they kind of have that together. Then when we look at the mid-size to smaller manufacturers, these are the ones where if they have a marketing team, they might have one person.
Yeah.
And that's more common than you would think, but it's one person to do all of the marketing, own the entire marketing function for an organization. And that's just not sustainable. It's not feasible. One person cannot do everything. And oftentimes, these people are also sort of doubling as BDRs or working very closely with the BDRs. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sales and marketing are like this, especially in this type of industry where sales cycles are long, they're complex, these are high dollar deals. They're not something where someone's going to go on a website and click buy and put it in their cart. There's a reason for that. So knowing that marketing and sales need to be closely intertwined, I think it really depends on any particular manufacturer's business priorities and business goals. Is it immediately to build out your pipeline? If it's that, then you need a certain type of marketing. You need certain marketing support. You might want to look at an ABM strategy specifically, just so you can target those potentially high value customers that you've been trying to get in front of, you've been trying to close deals with. So that's sort of one example. If it is about, hey, we really need help with our brand, we don't have any messaging, we don't have anything written down. And by the way, a lot of these things are all true at the same time for many manufacturers, not just one or the other. But hey, we really need help with clarifying our brand identity. Well, then you would want to work with a branding agency, somebody who can kind of help you work through those steps and put together this really nice, clear, cohesive brand and brand story that you can then use across marketing efforts. And then there's also, awareness components of that. So that's kind of more where PR comes in, where getting involved in your external, like local community comes in, just all these other different elements. But what it boils down to is that manufacturers should look at marketing as a split between the sort of revenue operations where, sales is a piece of that and lead generation is a piece and, developing like a clearer, stronger, like sort of funnel versus the awareness side. And those two work together to make a successful marketing function. And yeah, that also there needs to be a connection between the marketing and the sales side as well, just because, again, for a lot of these companies, we're not talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of leads all at once. We're talking about a couple hundred, maybe at most. And, you need the marketing support, add those touch points, add ways for these leads to engage and create opportunities for them to come to you as well. Sorry, long answer.
No, great answer. I love it. What is the cost of remaining invisible? And this manufacturing is dead perception continuing. What is the cost to individual manufacturers and the industry as a whole in your estimation?
I think opportunity cost is a great way to look at this. You might be fine if you do nothing to improve your visibility or create visibility. You might be fine, right? However, you could also be missing out on a huge share of your market. So something that it's like the Bible for LANC is the 95-5 rule. So that basically states that 95% of your potential market at any given time is not going to be in market for your solution at that time. AKA, they're not ready to buy whatever you are selling at any given time. 5% might be, right? And you're probably already talking to those people, but the 95% of people are not. And so the question that we like to pose to our clients and prospective clients is, okay, so what are you doing to engage the 95% of people who could buy from you, even if they're not buying from you today? And I think, again, this is not just specific to manufacturing companies, but it is a problem, is that most manufacturers can't really think or look beyond their product. And what do
Yes.
we say about our product? What's our story about our product? And you can't only rely on having a good product to create this sort of visibility that we're talking about, to earn the kind of share of voice, the mind share that we're talking about. And what you risk by not investing in this is that when any of those 95% of people in your market are ready to buy, and it's between you and somebody else who did invest in building their brand, who did invest in visibility, who did invest in earning that mind share,
Yeah.
why are they going to go to you versus them? They already know the other person. They
Yep.
don't know anything about you. That's the justification, is that you shouldn't just be in front of these people when they're ready to buy something from you. You need to be in front of them all the time. And to do that, you can't just be saying, here's our product, here's our product, here's our product. No matter how great that product might be, it's about all the other adjacent topics and adjacent opportunities to that
Absolutely.
that can really help you make an impression on those people.
I love it. I love that. Stephanie, we kind of got off the Stephanie topic a little bit, so I want to go back to you, um, and your story. What are you have a team of 3 people. What do you think your team would talk about you as a leader? How would they describe you as a leader?
Oh my goodness. Hopefully all good things. I think they would describe me as being energetic. I think I'm not a super like laid back person in general, but I think like as a boss, I'm pretty laid back
Okay.
because I trust them. The two people that are on my team, and we also have a network of contractors we work with, trusted, vetted contractors, people I've worked with before, or who come highly recommended. But my people that are on my staff full time, I trust them to do their jobs. There's a reason that I hired them. I know that they care about what they do. I know that they care about being successful. They're driven people. And I would hope that if you ask them about me, that they would say that I recognize that and that I'm creating an environment for that. So I like structure.
Yeah.
I definitely like structure, but I'm also not I'm not a micromanaging boss. Maybe in some situations I'm too hands off. I don't know, but I just have so much trust and faith in my employees that they will get the job done, that I don't really worry so much about like, okay, well, you need to be online from this time to this time. And, you need to do this way and do that way. We do have our processes. We do have some things that are very specific, especially when it comes to fulfillment for clients and things like that. We have those set expectations. However, the rest of it is very, very flexible. And I hope that they would say that they feel valued. They feel that they have a little bit more autonomy and control over their time, right? We all have only so much time on this earth, limited time
Absolutely.
on this earth. And I'm not in the business of daycare and babysitting. So I hope they would say that they feel
Yeah.
I'm a cool boss and a cool leader.
I like that. I like that. What in your career, you're young, but you're super driven, amazingly sharp, you know your stuff. What has been to date the biggest mistake that you've made, and what lesson did you learn?
Yeah, so I've made plenty of mistakes throughout the course of my career, but I think maybe one of the more recent ones was a business owner rookie mistake that I made.
Okay.
Now, when I answered the question about what I would want my employees to say about me as a leader, me being very cool, being very invested in them,
Yeah.
all of that is great, right? However, I have made the mistake of over investing my time trying to
Mm.
make clients happy,
Hmm.
who maybe couldn't be made happy, um, and ultimately it was sort of a fruitless a fruitless venture because they just ended up leaving anyway, which, then kind of left me in a position of, well, I'm a really small agency. It's me and two other people. We've only been in business for 2 years. Again, we're entirely self-funded. So losing a client is a big deal for us.
Yeah.
And that was a really big learning experience for me, which is that I can be invested in the success of my clients. I can be there for them, but I also have to, I think, be a little bit more judicious about when I'm bringing a client in, making sure that they are actually a fit for us and a fit for our services. Because while someone could say, I really want PR,
Yeah.
I really want you to get media opportunities and do this and that, it doesn't necessarily mean that they fully understand what they're asking for or that they have realistic expectations. And while we're a great agency and, even for that client, we were able to get them some great results. It just, nothing was ever enough. And so it was a good learning experience for me to just kind of not say yes to everything just because I'm new and because I'm trying to prove myself. And yeah, I've learned that, and it sounds crazy to be like, no, you have to say no
Oh,
to new business if it's not the right fit, but it's so true. It ends up costing you more in the long run.
it does. I agree 100%. I think that vetting clients is almost as important as vetting employees. How would you agree or disagree with that statement? Yeah.
I did a talk last year that it was on my alma mater campus at Shippensburg, their communications day or communications and journalism day. And, there was a whole session on that about culture and culture fit with organizations. And yeah, I think it's a very similar vein of the type of people that you bring into your organization really impact that culture. And I think it's true that the clients also impact that culture. And I think it also ties in with the conversation we had earlier about the cost of not investing in
Mm,
having, this is more specifically like internal communications, not having a strategy for that, but also not having any sort of infrastructure for celebrating and elevating employees for what they do. We all spend 40 hours a week or more at our jobs. Generally speaking, people care about their jobs, and it feels good to be celebrated. I mean, you could be the most cynical person in the world and say, I wouldn't care, that wouldn't matter to me. And I don't mean just like, all right, here's a pizza party. I mean like actually something that's like recognizing people for doing good work.
yes.
And that's also a great way to engage your employees and retain them. So
Yes.
if you want to talk about the cost, if you're not doing that stuff and someone else is, it's going to be easier for them to attract employees and retain employees in the
Yep.
same vein that they could more easily attract and retain customers.
Absolutely. I love that. Stephanie, what is something that you and Lank are excited about or see as the future of this industry, specifically marketing in this industry?
I think all the things that we talked about today in this interview, so while manufacturing has a PR problem, manufacturing has a visibility problem, right? It's also an opportunity for this
Absolutely.
industry. So I think there really is an untapped well for strategic communications, integrated marketing, for brand in manufacturing. And I would love to see a renaissance for this industry in that way.
I
The
love it.
manufacturers, as I said earlier, who are stepping up to the plate, who are working on their visibility, who are working on PR and strategic communications and telling their brand story, which for me really constitutes one of very high level three different things, which is people, processes, and outcomes. That's really our larger framework for how we tell stories about brands, because
Yep.
those are what make up the
Absolutely.
business, right?
Yep.
People, process, and outcomes. Who works for you? How do you do your work? And that means a lot of different things. It's not just what machinery do you have on the floor, what job are you doing, but also like, how does a business run? What is the culture of the business, right? Like that's a huge component of it. And then
Yep.
outcomes, yeah, the product, but also what is the customer experience like? What is your impact on the community? All these other questions that fall within those three high level categories.
Yep.
Um, so That is generally how we approach telling brand story for any manufacturer. And, it sounds very sort of high level and squishy, but trust me, it's a real thing. It really works. I'm looking forward to being able to work with more manufacturers in the future. We're currently accepting new clients. So if you're looking for help, holler. I'm really looking forward to seeing that transformation take place. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us to undo this public perception that manufacturing doesn't even exist anymore and needs to be 100% brought back to the United States, when really, and this is to the point you were making earlier, that yes, there are some structural and policy changes that need to happen to strengthen the manufacturing industry, but manufacturing is still here. There's
Yes.
so many different manufacturing companies out there doing everything you could possibly imagine.
Yep.
And we just need to tell that story. We need to get eyes on that story and help change that perception.
I love it. What is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to share with the audience?
I think something that I really want to make clear, because I think a lot of this can sound kind of overwhelming. And we talked a little bit about where you can get started, right?
Yeah.
You need to understand what the business priority is. What resources do you have? How can marketing or
Yes.
strategic comms support that, right? But you don't have to do everything all at once. And you do have more resources than you think. You
Yes.
have people that work for you who are going to be willing to speak up. You have customers probably who are going to be willing to speak up if you're not working in like a very sensitive space, of course. But you're probably going to have customers willing to speak up. You're going to have partners in your industry and in your community who are going to want to work with you. Generally speaking, people are very receptive because you're creating value for them too. It's not just, you're asking for a favor and that's that. So just know you have more resources. You have more of what you need to be successful than you may think. It's just taking that initial step, earmarking the budget. Earmarking the budget. Remember,
Yes.
marketing is not just a cost center. If you
Yes.
use marketing correctly and strategically, you can use it to build out your pipeline
Yes.
and to really complement what your BDRs are doing, your sales organization is doing. But all you need to do is take that first step.
Yep. I love it. Thank you for being a guest today. Thank you for sharing with us what you shared and telling your story. Folks, this was an amazing. It was a ride. Let's be honest. It was a ride. We learned about Stephanie growing up in the shadows of Bethlehem Steel to becoming this super sharp powerhouse that she is in this industry, working behind and being the voice of some of manufacturing's most visible brands. She showed us what it was like to build momentum, build community, and build a brand that matters in this industry. We talked about the myth that manufacturing's dead. Anybody listening to this knows that that is categorically false, to use Stephanie's term, and why visibility is really our most untapped resource and opportunity. We explored what it means to grow business and some of the failures that happen, and why, quite frankly, the next generation won't come knocking on our door. We have to show them open doors. Stephanie shared with us how culture isn't just that internal buzzword that we talk about. It's the story that we tell, that we share with the world. And it's really, in my opinion, folks, time that we stopped whispering and started shaping this narrative and shouting who we are and what we believe in, our values, our vision, our mission, from rooftops and from mountaintops, and really getting this out there. So again, Stephanie, thank you for showing up with honesty and vulnerability, the insights and heart that you bring to these conversations. Grateful to have you with us, but grateful to have you as a storyteller shaping the future of this industry. You're going to be doing great things for a long time. To those of you listening, thank you for being on this ride. As usual, I none of this wouldn't happen if you didn't listen every week. Like, this is a big deal to me that I even have you here with me at the end of what will be episode 108. If this episode has sparked anything within you, please share it with a friend, a colleague, your grandma. Your grandma would love Stephanie. And while you're, sharing it, rate and review the show on whatever platform you're on. When you rate and review the show, it rockets us up the charts so more people find it. It's not for me. I don't make any money on this show, guys. It's for the community that we're building here. In this episode, if you're going to rate and review it, say Stephanie's a badass in the comments. That I don't need you to talk about the show. I don't need you to talk about me. Let's talk about Stephanie when you rate and review the show. That's how we're going to continue to keep these stories moving. Don't forget, folks, you can catch up on past episodes, get plugged into our Lead the Change tour that is kicking off in literally 2 short weeks. It'll be the week after this episode's released. Super anxious about that, but it'll be awesome. We're going to have a lot of fun. And you can find everything else that we're working on at themfgconnector.com. I'm also on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok to bring up a platform Stephanie talked about earlier that I don't always plug, but I am on there. And if you're into leadership, culture, real world problems, check out our other shows, Work But Make It Human and The Manufacturing Connector. I'm all about telling these stories and solutions and all the things. So folks, we'll be back next week with another voice shaping the culture and of the manufacturing world from the inside out. Till the next time, keep leading, keep building, and keep telling your story. Bye.